to allow more of our community to join us. Again, appreciate you being here. I'm going to wait another 30 seconds to a minute to allow more of our community to join us, and then I'll kick right back up. Okay. Again, for those of you who just joined us, my name is Israel Vela. I am the superintendent here in the Kent School District. Thank you for being here this morning. I want to give you a little overview of this morning and what you will be seeing and hearing, and then also talk to you a little bit about our budget update and what we've done thus far. And I'll begin there. If you have been watching our board meeting since last November, October, November, and even previous to that, we have been really focusing on being transparent with our community on where we are with our budget status. Unfortunately, there are many districts across the state that are already in binding conditions or in situations where budget is a shortfall for them. We are in a situation where we need to be transparent and also share with you where we are from a budget standpoint in order for us to make the decisions we need to make to stay fiscally solvent for the future, especially for our kids. We have had several of these updates thus far. We've had two staff meeting updates of over 800 staff that have joined us on Teams. We've been meeting with our labor groups since last fall on sharing with them where we were and where we are, and continue to share the updates. And that's what you'll hear today is what our board has seen as of January 7th, and any updates that we have heard from our federal government or state. You'll hear that as well. In addition to our labor partners, we've also had parent advisory groups. We also have had one in-person community meeting that we have had. And with that said, I also wanted to share with you that today we have a presentation mode that Mr. Parangwa will be sharing. We will also have time, and most of our time, for a Q&A that we will be answering your questions to the best of our ability. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Parangwa to get us started. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us in this beautiful Saturday morning. Today, we're going to have an agenda as listed on the screen. We will talk about the 24-25 closing and how we did, and then we're going to go into the 25-26 budget and beyond. There will be some key takeaways, next steps, and then there would be an opportunity for questions, comments, and answers. And so to start off, here is the outcome of our general fund for 24-25. So in the first column, you would see here the budget that was adopted by the board on June of 2024. And here you see the revenues was estimated to be 528 million, expenditures at 537.6 million, and an anticipated deficit of about 9.7 million. With a beginning balance of 69.8, we estimated our ending balance to be 60.1 million. And with some designations deducted from that, that leaves us with unassigned ending fund balance of about 53 million or 10.2%. I run through that number because of the importance of the bottom line, 10.2%. We have a board policy 6022 that requires us to maintain at least a 5% unassigned ending fund balance. And so during the budget adoption, the estimated unassigned ending fund balance was 10.2%. how we did after the close of the year. So we closed the books on November of 2025. And you will see here on the screen, the second column, how we use those budget. And so the revenue that we generated was 526 million. Our expenditure was 537 million with a actual deficit of 11.1 million, the same beginning balance. But the ending fund balance is 58.7 million, which you notice is about 1.4 million less than what we originally anticipated. We also have a designation of 12.8 million, which leaves us with the unassigned ending fund balance of 45.9 million or 8.9%. The unassigned ending fund balance is lower than anticipated, but still above the 5%. And so we have complied with the board policy. But the third column, I'd like to highlight that we have accurately estimated our revenues. If you notice that we have generated 99.6% of what we estimated, and on the expenditure, we spent 99.9% of what we thought we were going to spend. Our ending fund balance, though it's a little bit lower, but it's still at about 97.7%. So that is the 24-25 recap. When we look at the history of the general fund, you will notice the trend of revenues and expenditure. And here, what I'd like to show you is the revenue that we have in 2021, which is 403 million, which actually has grown over the years to 525.9 million in 24-25. It's a good thing because the revenue has been increasing over a period of time. But when you look at the expenditure, it's the same thing. We were at 409.5 million, but our expenditure in 24-25 is 537 million. When you look at the trending and when we analyze the rate of increase, we notice that the revenue has been increasing at about 5.3% every year for the last 5 years, whereas the expenditure has been increasing at about 7.2% every year for the last 5 years. So here you could see that the expenditure has been outpacing our revenues year after year. And this is one of the reasons why we are currently where we're at right now, where we need to make some budget adjustments. When we look at the makeup of our revenues, where the money is coming from, I'll take this opportunity to thank our community for continuously supporting our EP&O levy. Here, as you notice, that we are generating about 77.1 million in EP&O levy, which is approximately 15% of the district's revenue. The other biggest portion of our revenue is generated by enrollment, which is the state general purpose, 288.4 million, or about 55% of our revenue, of our total revenue. And then we have the state special purpose revenue, which is about 22%, 117.7 million. And they are made up of special education, what we commonly known as categorical program or learning assistance program, multilingual education, nutrition services, and transportation. And then federal special purpose, which is about 6%. Those are, again, the federal portion of special education, the Title funds. Well, so when you hear about Title I, Title II, III, and IV, those are under the federal special purpose. When we look at the expenditures of the district, about 82% of the district expenditures are mainly on salaries and benefits. That's about $440 million. We also have about 73 million, or about 13%, are purchase services like utilities, insurance, contracts. They're all part, and when we do repairs and maintenance of our building, those are part of the purchase services. And then 4%, or about 20.6 million, are materials and supplies. So in June of 2024, we submitted to the board a budget which the board adopted. But part of that also is for us to submit a forecast. Those are required by the state. And so when you look at the adopted budget, which is the second column, that was the budget that was approved by the board for 25-26. And then in the succeeding years, 26-27 to 28-29, those are the forecasts based on assumptions that we knew at that time. And based on this, you would see that not only that we are experiencing deficit in 25-26, in the succeeding years, we are continuously experiencing a budget deficit for the reason that I mentioned before, that the expenditure is outpacing the revenues. To the extent that when you look at the bottom of this, you would see that our ending fund balance are going to be at a negative 14.5 million, or about negative 2.4%. Well, during that time, we advised the board that if we continue on this trajectory, we need to rectify this in the succeeding years. And if you recall, during that time, we mentioned that we need to make budget cuts of approximately 7.5 million for 26-27, another 7.5 in 27-28, and an additional 27.5 in 28-29 on top of each other. Well, many things had happened since. And so here are the changes that happened since June of 2025, which is the budget adoption. Our enrollment, when the students showed up in September and October, what we have noticed is that our enrollment has declined by 792 students from the adopted budget. We do the enrollment projections and do the best we can to project them. As a matter of fact, we have been using the same methodology for years, and we have been very, very accurate in projecting our enrollment. However, in October of 2025, there were some things that we did not anticipate, and we feel like this is an anomaly that resulted in a reduction of about 792 students. Well, because we are funded by enrollment, that has an immediate impact into our revenue for the current year, 25-26. And that is about 8.2 million reduction in revenue. Likewise, when you look at the inclusive education, our inclusive education count also has declined by 413 students from the adopted budget. And when we recalculated our revenue, we saw that the revenue dropped by 6.2 million this year, 25-26. And when you add the two together, it's about 14.4 reduction in revenue. Well, the good thing is we have been monitoring this enrollment very carefully month after month. And what we have noticed is that the IE enrollment is increasing. And so what you will notice in some of the succeeding update that we will make those adjustments to reflect what we think it would be more likely by the end of 25-26. So you would see some changes in the succeeding budget updates. Since June, we also noticed an increase in staffing in our special education, mainly from our special education program, due to the additional IEP. So when we enter into the year, we don't always know all the students and whether they have IEP or not. And so when we find that there are more IEP coming, we have to adjust to it. And that resulted in an additional almost 31 FTE. But in addition to that, we also want to make sure that we are in compliance with our collective bargaining agreement. Some of the funding source for the building family liaison and social worker, we have to make some changes in order for us to be able to serve all the students. The concern is that if it is only funded by categorical program, we could only serve the children that are LAP eligible. Well, in this case, when we made the change, we are now able to serve all the children at the building. During the, from adopted, we also reached an agreement with our two collective bargaining, with our bargaining units, SCAP and KO. And so that happened between June and October. And for 25-26, closing has been completed. And as I mentioned earlier, the ending fund balance is 1.4 million less than anticipated. Resulting from all the bullet points that I mentioned above, we have to make some adjustment in the current year. And so we implemented budget cuts effective immediately, which is the reduction in central office MSOP of about 5.2 million and hiring freeze of vacant positions about 1.9 million. And this next slide, you will see the details of that. So here's the details of the cuts that we made in the central office MSOP. We grouped them by community. So the teaching and learning community, you see it listed right here, which is approximately $1.4 million. Technology and partnership and all the departments that are involved, it's $889,000. Finance and the departments, 34,850. Human resources, 251,000. Operations, $2.4 million, and the superintendent's office, 188,000. When you look at the right side of the screen, you would also see another way of looking at those cuts. For example, the object category. What areas of the budget did we cut? So on printing and transportation, about 14,000. Extra time, overtime, 1.4 million. Materials and supplies, 932,000. Purchase services, 2.6 million. Travel, 147,000. And capital outlay, 40,000. The same total, 5.123 million. When we look at the cuts that we made or the positions that we froze and and cut, here are the listings of them. I'm not going to go read them one by one, but the total of them is 18.23%, and they're mainly in the central office. The total of that is 1.985 million altogether. So when we do budget forecasting, here are some of the elements that change. The federal funds remain uncertain. Title I, II, and III are projected to lose back then approximately about 8 million. And I made a note right here because just on January 14th, last week, we heard from OSPI that this time Title I will be fully funded. Previously, we reported that those will be cut by 26%. Now we heard that Title I will be fully funded. Title II, III, and IV will be reduced by 20%. Previously, we heard that those will be cut completely. And so what we notice is that the federal funding is improving a little bit. We didn't have time to make the change on our forecast, but the next version of the forecast, you would see the impact of these changes. Workers' compensation, we have been experiencing a significant increase, approximately 3 million this upcoming year. And the paid family medical leave premium has been increasing, more than double since 2021. And then the current EP&O levy that the community supported will expire on December 2027. And so we will be going at the special election on February 9, 2027. We will be asking you again, the community, to approve a new EP&O levy, which will be effective January 1, 2028. And we would ask that you continue to support us because the amount that is involved here is approximately 80 million per year. And if we don't have it, it would have a funding cliff and our revenue would be reduced by approximately 80 million. So we are hoping that you will continue to support us in our EP&O levy. And then when we do our enrollment projection, which is the basis of a calculation of our budget for the future years, we notice that our enrollment is also declining from 26-27 and beyond. And so here is the slide of the enrollment projection. So the orange color here are all actual. Those are actual enrollment for the prior year. When you look at 25-26, you would see that we adopted the budget at 24,222. In October, as mentioned earlier, that we experienced a 792 reduction in our enrollment. And that's the green. And then in 26-27 to 28-29, you see a continuous decline in our enrollment. And this is the same methodology that we use in many, many years. The difference is that now we have a new normal, which is the green section. The green bar is now our new normal. And we have not been seeing, we've been monitoring them since October up until now, and we are not seeing any positive change in our enrollment. So we believe that the 23,430 will be where we're going to end by the end of the year. When we look at some other assumptions that we use for the general fund as we develop the forecast, I mentioned the enrollment. The IPD is what we commonly know as cost of living adjustments. And so these are numbers that is provided to us by OSPI, and we use whatever it is that they project. We looked at our class size, and when we do the forecasting, this is the class sizes that we use. Then when we look at the step in column adjustment, we estimated that to be about 1.25%. And simply what that is that every employee of the district, teachers, and including all the other units, move into the step in the salary scale. And if they submitted additional credentials, they move into the column. So when you look at those natural growth in expenditures, that is approximately about 1.25%. Then we look at all the collective bargaining agreement we have, and here I noted where they are at and when they will become open. It's really important to know that because when we enter into negotiation, they have impact into our budget. And then finally, the EP&O levy would be, as mentioned before, that they're going to be expiring in December 2027, and we will be at the special election in February 9, 2027. So with all of that assumptions, we put together a forecast, a new forecast. And so you would see what the board has adopted, the first column, the adjustment for this year, and now what we are operating on 25-26. When you look at 26-27 to 28-29, you will see that the deficit has grown compared to the previous forecast that we did, to the extent that our ending fund balance will be at a negative 105 million, or about negative 17.5 million. And we know that we cannot stay there. We have to figure out how to be able to rectify this so that we stay at 5% or above. And so what you will see next, this is the same slide as the previous one, except that I calculated how much cuts do we need to make in order to maintain a 5%. And you would see in 26-27 that we need to make 35 million cuts, budget cuts, to maintain the 5%. And we need to make an additional 9 million cuts in 27-28, plus another 10 million in 28-29. And you would see that we will be able to maintain a minimum of 5% over the 3-year period. But that's a big task to make. And so that's why, but we just would like to be able to quantify them and size them up so that we know what the size of the challenge that we are facing. In this calculation, I have not counted a potential increase in special ed enrollment, and so you would see this change in the succeeding version. Also, the impact of the title funds is not yet included here. So this chart right here will improve by the time you see the next version of this. So what are we looking at in terms of cuts? So 35 to 40 million is the goal. And that number, again, will change depending on after we recalculate it. So we're looking at building supports, 4 to 4.5 million. Categorical programs, we're looking at 8 to 8.5 million. Central office, 2.5 to 3 million. Class size, 11 to 12 million. Materials and supplies, about 1 to 2 million. Operations, 1.5 to 2 million. And program adjustments, 7 to 8 million. And you see the total here, 35 to 40 million. So those are the areas that we're looking at. We are in progress. Nothing has been decided yet. And so we're still continuously sharpening our pencil to be able to get to our goal. Here are some of the key takeaways. Assumptions and estimates may change before a budget is finalized. So the numbers that I showed you before, by the time we get to the final budget proposal, it may change. Enrollment decline is projected to continue in the projected years. And the one thing that I'd like to share about the enrollment decline is that our revenues drops faster than we could drop the expenditure when there's an enrollment decline. As an example, if our enrollment dropped by 10 students at various buildings, one for each building, we could immediately lose $120,000. And but we cannot immediately reduce our expenditures. So our revenue would be down by 120 and our expenditures would remain the same. The effect of that on an increasing enrollment is the same. Our revenue goes up faster. We don't necessarily need to increase our expenditures when there's an enrollment increase. The state funding is not catching up with the increasing cost of doing business, thus resulting in budget deficit. And again, mentioned about the title funds, some of the federal funds remain at risk, and we will continue to monitor the development in the federal government. EP&O levy will expire on December 2027, and we really would like to ask for your support in this February 9, 2027 election. Continuous structural deficit in the current and projected years, and you see the chart that it continued to drain our ending fund balance if we don't take any action. We need to implement budget cuts, as mentioned, 35 million most immediately. The general fund operating cost, this is just a perspective. If you look at the general fund operating cost per month, we spend about 47 million. A 5% minimum unassigned fund balance, which is the current policy, equates to approximately 2.5 weeks of operation. And lastly, there will be an upcoming bill to require every school district a minimum of 8.5% and a maximum of 70%. And if this were to happen, this will increase the minimum fund balance from 26.9 million to 45.6 million. Imagine if we need to come up with that much more ending fund balance. This will increase the amount of cuts that we have to make. And so again, this is still an upcoming bill. There's no bill number yet, but we heard all the conversation at the state level. Here are some of the next steps. We are currently at the last bullet of the January 24 community budget meeting. But as you could see on the top of that, we have done the board retreat, community budget meeting, and all staff meeting. But I think the one that is worth notable here is the first day of legislative session. It started on January 12, and it's going to end in March 12, the last day of legislative session. We now have this opportunity for us to talk to our legislators and tell them about the inadequacy of our school funding. And so if you know of a legislature, or if you know somebody, or you can call someone, please do and ask them to fund education adequately. So on February 4, there will be a special meeting where we will discuss about the budget once again. And at that time, you will see some of the revised forecast. On February 1st, the governor will sign the budget bill. That would be the day. That will determine what would our COLA would be. That will determine some of the funding source from the state. And then some of the other dates that you see right here are opportunities for the community to participate in this whole process. June 24 is the date when the board will be adopting the budget. So, keep an eye on those dates and feel free to join us to make comments about the budget. And that concludes my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Parangal, for your detailed presentation. Just as a reminder to our community, much of what you've seen has been in our board docs or is on our board docs. And as Mr. Parangal mentioned, as things continue to change, we'll continue to update our board, our community, our staff. And as he also mentioned, lots still happening at the federal level. We move to the question portion of our time, and thank you for those who are putting your questions in the chat. We will be reading them, and Dr. Wade Behringer will be facilitating a question portion of our time. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Behringer.
Well, thanks, Israel. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to be here this morning with us, taking the opportunity to ask us questions around our budget situation and the presentation that Raul just gave. Just a quick little housekeeping around question and answering for the next half an hour. Um, you can raise your hand. I see we already have a hand raised. That's great. You can also put your question in the question and answer tab, which I think we already have three questions in there. You can also put them in the chat, and I will be reading the questions out loud if they're not being answered online. So you might have an answer to a question that's typed in. More often than not, we're probably going to read the questions out loud or call on people to share their questions. I would ask that all of our participants today please be respectful of this space. Please use appropriate language, and we'll have a very fruitful and informative time this morning. So we'll go ahead and get started. I know we have four questions in the question and answer that I saw pop in first. Then I saw Michael Hudgens' question, so we'll get to him right after we get to these questions that are in our question and answer. First question. I was told 2 weeks ago at an in-person community meeting. Whoops, sorry, it just changed right in front of me. I was told 2 weeks ago the trend head count was consistent for 5 years prior to 25-26. Then the estimated head count for 25-26 was increased without supported data. This was not simply a data error. The data was approved by multiple layers of staff. We continue to hear there was an increased headcount projection, but no actual data. Why was the headcount substantially increased for 25-26 when the 5 years prior showed this was not necessary? This is the basis of the shortfall. So, Raul, could you answer the question about uh, the increase in enrollment projection for 25-26?
Sure, yeah. So the methodology that we use in projecting the enrollment numbers, as you could see in the blue bar right here, 24,222, was the same methodology that we used for years. The same methodology that was also used by many districts within Washington, which is the cohort survival method. Uh, we were very confident about this methodology. And if you will take a look, and I don't have the data right here, but in 24-25, when we projected our enrollment, and then when we look at the year end, we were 0.18% variance rate from what we projected. And when you look at the prior year, it was very, very close. That we use the same methodology for 25-26. We didn't have any reason to believe that it would be this much different. And that's why we were very surprised about the number that we see in October. And so, like I said, we could have been a little bit more conservative if we knew more. But, the methodology that we use has been the same and it's been proven effective.
Thank you, Raul. Next question. Sorry, my every time the question's added, it did drops me back down to the bottom. Joe Riley, presentation still talks about future cuts as preliminary planning. I'm hearing rumors that programs are actively being modified, like KALA, dual language, and MLE. Is the district actively making changes to programs and class sizes to address plan reductions for next year? If so, why are these changes being made before presenting recommendations to the board? Just a high level response. We are looking at all programs and opportunities for efficiencies within the system as part of our cost savings or reductions. So there are conversations that are happening with those key personnel in those programs, buildings, about what does it look like if we were to modify, adjust, consolidate programs, and also looking at obviously the impact of that. So there are conversations happening actively, yes, and there'll be more to come with a board sharing with the board here this upcoming week. Next question. Joe Riley, I was told 2 weeks ago at an in-person community meeting that you would make more details available about the $5.2 million cuts being made. I also asked to have more details about the planned cuts for next year. I have not received the information. Will you commit to providing these details to the board in the next budget update on February 4th?
Going to answer that way. Yeah, so the information was provided to our PRA. PRA will be sending that information shortly.
Anonymous attendee, are school closures on the table or will that be a last resort? As if you've been keeping up with the school board presentations and things like that, we had a school board retreat in early January where the board went over and discussed their principles around the work that we do when it comes to making budget reductions. One of those principles was to stay away from closing schools. I can say right now that closing schools is not a conversation for 26-27. It has not been a conversation for 26-27 school year. So, and if it ever was, it would be a last resort. That is not something that we are discussing at this time. Okay. Next one, anonymous, with budget cuts, what are the class sizes changes expected to be based on the standards that were previously listed in the presentation? You listed 25-1 for K3, for example. Just at a high level, all of the class sizes will remain within the allowable KEA CBA language. So they will not be any higher than what is allowed by the teacher's contract language. For example, 25-1 for K3 will stay 25-1 for K3. But once those decisions have been made, then as Raul stated earlier, we'll continue to be adjusting our presentation to be updated with the newest information. So if and when those class sizes change on that slide that Raul shared as assumptions, those will change on that slide. Next question. District is currently projecting $35 million shortfall and is proposed cutting up to $3 million from central office, $8.5 million from categorical. Given the KSD consistency spends millions on outside law firms to litigate IEPs and 504 disputes, will the board commit to services first policy where the cost of legal defense is capped if it exceeds the cost of providing the students requested services such as paraeducator support or specializing equipment? It looks like you're asking the board, and the board is not on this particular presentation, so I'm not gonna answer that question. So appreciate the question. We have it, but it was actually asking of the board if the board was going to follow the services first policy. What is the outlook for para ed? Again, as we've stated, as far as reductions go, I know this wasn't part of the presentation, but 82% of our entire district's budget is salary and compensation and benefits for our personnel. So 82% of our entire budget is people. And so when we start looking at reductions, especially at the magnitude of $35 million, we have to see everything we can do to stay away from our schools. Unfortunately, $35 million cannot be just taken out of materials, supplies, and operating costs. Unfortunately, some employees will be impacted by that. I can't speak specifically right now to paras and paraeducation, but I can say that our students who are served with IEPs or in our MLE program by our paraeducators will still continue to be served by paraeducators in those programs as identified by their IEP and or the support needed based on the program that they're in. So there is no large scale para reduction. But like I said, there's a probability of reduction in all areas across the entire district because of the magnitude of the cuts that we're making. Um, Lori, to date, you have been unwilling to answer simply. Okay, oh, great. So let me get to the question here. Yes or no questions, or simply supply clarifications to the point of admin callings. Okay, let's see. Question is, additionally, are non-rep admin staff paid overtime? If so, is that contractual or even openly applied? So that's a question I believe that's been asked through a public records request that will be answered through a public records request. Okay. How much of our current deficit is being driven by compensatory ed settlements? Just a second, I just lost it. Resulting from district's failure. Okay, the last 3 years. Again, don't have a list of compensatory ed settlements or costs sitting in front of me to answer that question. Second. My screen is jumping all over the place because of the new questions. Next question. I'm concerned about the KLA and SE Link program. We don't currently have Link in any other high schools across the districts. Where might our future juniors and seniors go for general education classes in the future, KR or the nearest boundary school? Is our if our program at KLA were to be cut? I've seen incredible progress among the middle and high school students in Link. I think that question is specific to our Link program at the Kent Laboratory Academy. I know there's been communication that came out late last week, and there's been various parent meetings this week, meeting and having conversations with the principal and staff regarding that program. I think specifically the best person to answer those questions will be the principal, as she's responsible for programming and staffing in that space. I know that she and I have been in communication, and she's been sharing information with any families, and it's her goal to meet with any family that has any questions about any changes, adjustments, or services that will be provided through the Kent Lab Academy this year and moving forward. So I suggest reaching out to Dr. Nip in those spaces. Aaron's got a question. With these proposed program reduction modifications, is the Odyssey program vulnerable in dissolving or restructuring, or by recently shifting it under the umbrella of special education, protected from state with the state and federal funds that are earmarked for those students? There has not been a conversation about moving the high cap Odyssey program under the special education umbrella, so that's not something that's currently being discussed. Again, as I said earlier about programming, we're looking at all programs around efficiency. There is no one program that we are doing away with. We're looking at how our programs are staffed, working with the key staff in those areas around how we can be more efficient in those spaces. But as we currently see Odyssey running, Odyssey will continue to serve in the schools that we have Odyssey in, unless there's an adjustment. But all students will still have access to Odyssey at our elementary level, as we currently have. Aside from voting for the levy next year, what else can families do to help?
I can do that one, Wade.
Great question.
Yeah, great question. I appreciate that. As you know, our legislative session, it's a short one, started, I believe, last week on Monday, 60 days. The specific pieces that you can help us with, besides writing your legislative rep, emailing them, the specific areas are bundled into no costs or cost savings legislative actions that can take place. For example, there are pieces around being held exempt for taxes for essential district services. So modifying those sales tax uh, service statute to exempt us from contracts, temporary staffing, information technology, and services would be helpful. So your push with the legislatures and your reps would be appreciated there. In addition, there are many costs for districts, such as public records requests. We're asking for reform around that because of the costs, not only in those requests, but also in the operationalizing of those requests. And that's for all districts. We also are asking for operating budget pieces. For those of you who are pushing at the legislative rep assembly last year, around operating budgets, we're looking for materials, supplies, and operating costs increase of $100 per student, specifically moving forward with that bill. In addition to that, student transportation and special education, which is not fully funded by our state and federal government. So those are just a few items that you can help with at the state level in this session and sessions to come. Thank you.
So Israel, I'd like to add to that. On October 15, I did a presentation to the board that provides how much are the shortfall on each of those categories that Israel mentioned. You may look into the October 15, or perhaps we could actually put this into this link, to put the link into this, so that you may equip yourself and say, if you talk about, let's say, shortfall in MSOC, it would tell you on that slide how much are we short every year. Special education, multilingual education, transportation, everything is there on the October 15 presentation. And so, yeah, you could use that to make them aware of what the situation in Kent.
Thanks, Raul.
Okay, thank you both. Next question, how much does the district spend on legal fees related to IEPs and 504 disputes? Again, don't have the legal fees in front of me on that. Next question, will there be a reduction in force or teacher layoff in the coming future projections? It is our hope that we do not have to go down the road of a formal reduction in force. We would like to, at all costs, try to work through all of our labor agreements and come to these reductions without having to do formal processes as a reduction in force. Next question. Do you know where the majority of the students are moving to with the lower enrollment? It was previously mentioned that KSD is working to identify a pattern. Do we know if the students are homeschooling or shifting to neighboring districts? If so, which one? Anyone want to take that one? I can also answer it as well, but I'm getting tired of hearing my voice. But we do have okay. Whoever said sure.
Yeah, I can answer some of it. Yeah, we do have students that move to that go to neighboring districts for school. I think the what we're seeing in terms of the largest shifts are around online schools. So I think that's probably the biggest portion. We've always had movement of students and families kind of back and forth between from others coming to us and from resident students going to neighboring school districts.
If I may add to that also, let's also include the lower birth rate, because the incoming kindergarten is based on the birth 5 years ago. And so we have been seeing a pattern of a lower birth rate 5 years ago, and we've been monitoring that very closely. In addition to that, we also have 12th grader graduating. And so some of we call them the bubble, like the increased enrollment in the past, now are starting to exit the district as they graduate. And so you have lower inflow and you have a bigger outflow. That's one of the reasons why our enrollment is lower.
Thank you. Yeah, the other piece to that too, as you know, those that live obviously in the Kent community, the cost of living in Kent and South King County has been on the rise over the last handful of years. People have seen that in their property taxes. We're going to feel it again probably at the state level, specifically in King County in a lot of ways. So we do see families moving south into Pierce County and even further south than Pierce County into those districts as well. Um,
I wanted to add, Wade, to the enrollment piece just for our community. From a state perspective, enrollment is dropping statewide. Uh, this from last year to this year, 9,000 students, over 9,000 students drop across the state. So it's not just in Kent, it's across the state. So I wanted to point that. And that number has been dropping since COVID as well. And that's why it's important for us to continue to push the legislature to continue to fund education. Even though our enrollment is dropping, we still have the need for funding special education, operational costs and MSOCs, and transportation, among other things.
So Israel, here on this chart, you would see that in 1920, that was the COVID year, we were at 25,455. It dropped on the second year of COVID. We have not recovered from it, and it still continues to declining. The same pattern goes at the state level.
Next one's not a question. Valerie just put a piece in the chat here, a link to a bill, what parents can do, recommending folks sign in the pro. I'm not sure if that's the bill regarding uh, I'm not sure which bill that one is off the top of my head. Thank you for sharing that information. Since you've identified the decrease in enrollment, have you identified the reasons? We just shared some of those reasons as well. What are the efforts being made to rectify the situation? Yes, we're having conversations about that constantly. The problem is you just can't go to the districts and try to claw back our kids. And so what we need to do is we need to continue to create the best learning environment for our students here in Kent. So not only do our students want to stay, but people want to move into Kent and come and go to schools, come to go to our schools. So we are constantly making an effort to those students that are accessing maybe online learning opportunities outside of Kent, entice them that we have online learning opportunities here in Kent as well. Again, a big part of things that we're doing is to figure out what we can do to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our students and our families to ensure enrollment of those students. Okay, thank you. I see that they just added that particular bill, enrollment stabilization. Let's see here. Has KSD considered cutting administrative salaries along with other budgets? Again, I answered this question in our last community session. I'll answer it again. An important piece to remember when we are, as you're working to create a long-lasting and impactful learning environment for students, is you want to have the best people in all positions, from all of our support staff in our school buildings to our teachers to our administrators. Same thing goes with administrators at central office and support staff at the central office. Having a competitive salary is important. Kent School District salaries at central office, which I believe is being referred to here, really are competitive with our neighboring districts. We are not the highest by any sense. We're not the lowest. We're in the middle. So I think it's important to know that we want to attract and retain high quality leaders and staff in all positions. And so therefore you have to compensate them. That's important. So that's that. Can you explain communications digital licenses referenced in the $5.2 million in budget cuts and why that line item is being increased as parts of these cuts? Can you also explain how the cuts to curriculum this year relate to the $1.7 million purchase in iReady curriculum in November of 2025? All right. Well, I know we have a couple people online that may be able to speak to the communications digital license as well as the iReady curriculum costs. So go ahead. Any team members want to, you can unmute yourself. I can't see your faces right now. So I don't know if it's Kyle or Faith, and I know Rebecca for iReady, maybe. You're muted, Rebecca.
Hi, it's Rebecca from Teaching and Learning. Just to address the iReady questions, I saw several of those. There are several layers of the iReady contract that we have that include the adopted math curriculum materials, the diagnostic that we've been using for almost 10 years in KSD for our reading and math, kindergarten through 8th grade. And then there's other components of online instruction. We're always thinking about in teaching and learning what are the best uses for those digital online learning resources. And that is an ongoing discussion. So just to articulate a little bit more, iReady is part of core curriculum that's been adopted, and then also a diagnostic. And then there's other components that are supplementary to the online instruction that's aligned to students' adaptive diagnostic results. I don't have the full breakdown of that 1.7 million, Joe, that you were referring to, but happy to look into that for you. I'll pass it on to Faith or Spencer.
Either Spencer, anybody, the communications digital license, why it's being increased?
No, so I'll have to research that and get back to you and look at that more closely. I'm not aware of an increase in communications at this point, but we can certainly get back to you.
Next question, can you explain why you're advocating for changes in public records when in this very meeting you've redirected 2 questions to be answered via public record? All of my budget questions that I sent KSD budget were redirected to your staff to public records as well. Okay, that's a statement. The reason I mentioned the public records is because I believe that I saw a public record for the question that was asked, so the answer will be given through a public record. Let's see here. Guled said you need to cut $35 million for 26-27. Personnel is 82% of your budget. That's 439.6 in salaries and benefits. Simple math, 35 million represents 8% of your personnel budget, or approximately 292 teaching positions at 120K each. Sorry, I just jumped off my page there. These are mathematically incompatible. Which principle will you compromise? The $35 million target or to minimize the RIF principle? And when will you share specific proposals with the community? Again, proposals will be coming, information will be coming to the board. So we will be sharing information and updates with the board as those become available. I'm not sure really what you're getting at around which principle is going to be compromised. But as I said earlier, with $35 million budget shortfall, reductions need to be made, and we are looking at efficiencies as well as revenue enhancements before we're looking at reductions. Ollie, do you want to add anything to that question or that response? If not, we'll just move on. Don't you think that being transparent with the costs of legal fees relating to IEPs and lawsuits is something that taxpayers? Okay, again, don't have that right in front of me. Would you be willing to disclose this information at future meetings? Again, I'm not going to answer for the district of whether or not we're going to disclose costs and legal fees related to IEPs and 504s in a setting like this. The October 2025 enrollment count showed 1,205 fewer students than budgeted, causing a $14.4 million revenue loss. 3.3% forecasting error. It's now late January 2026. 4 months later, can you provide a complete breakdown? Not in this particular meeting, we can't. But we should have that data. Who's responsible for the forecasting failure? We've used the exact same formula over and over again, year after year. So we believe this to be an anomaly, which it has been rectified for future years moving forward. What accountability measures exist? What specific changes have you made to prevent future errors of this magnitude? Yep, answered that. This forecasting failure triggered the entire crisis. Okay. Yeah, appreciate all that. Raul, I don't know if you want to answer any of
Yeah,
these
well,
questions in there.
yeah, the first thing obviously that we do is we have to recalibrate to a new normal. What is a new normal? It's 792 students less. That would be the basis for the future enrollment. The current enrollment, which is 792 less, are behind the scene are real name of students. And so basically what we're doing is we're tracking them down as we move forward. Students who are graduating, they're no longer in the roster next year, but we're also projecting all the enrollment, the kindergarten enrollment that are coming in who were born 5 years ago. In between the grade level, we are also applying a little bit of conservatism in it because of the experience that we just had. And so, again, the landscape is changing. The formula that we used in the past, which was very, very effective, may not necessarily be effective any longer. And so we're trying to do them almost on a student by student and moving them forward into the out years. Plus or minus some factor. And so, but there are level of conservatism that is being added to the forecast moving forward.
Thanks, Raul. All right, I'm gonna read the last question, then we're gonna stop. We're at 11:03. I know there's several people that have other things going on this weekend. You can always reach out to us, KSD budget at kent.k12.wa.us. Last part, I talked about not at liberty of sharing the $35 million. Again, I would encourage people to turn into the February 4th budget work session that Raul will be presenting. That'll be the newest and most updates to our work around the $35 million shortfall. That's again February 4th budget work session with our school board. That's when more things will be shared, more updates will be given in regards to our status. As far as the community giving opportunities for input, we have a survey out right now. It's been out for a bit. We ask that you complete that survey by tomorrow night. That's when it closes. I know it's been out for well over a week. So feel free that way. You can also send your input through the email I just shared. And in the end, the board votes on our adopted budget in June. So that'll be a board vote on the budget for 26-27 will be in June. And then we notify affected employees based on the timelines that are identified in their bargained agreements. And of course, it's our goal to let people know as soon as possible, as we know it does impact their livelihood, and the sooner they're able to know and make adjustments, the better. And we want to do that as quickly as we can. And so at that point, I know there's more questions here. We're going to log off. Appreciate you taking the time to be here this morning. I'm sorry if you didn't get your questions answered. We do have a recording of this event as well as all the questions in here. We'll work to continue to update our FAQs on our budget website. And hopefully that will answer some of these questions for you, as well as turning into the February 4th board budget work session where more information will be given to the board and probably more of your questions answered at that time as well. So thank you all very much. Appreciate your time. Have a great weekend. Go ahead, Israel.
No, I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. Appreciate the involvement in listening to where we are as an update and a district. as well as state level. So thank you, everyone.